Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today we discuss the terrifying truth about drugs and children, drug-endangered children. Across America, we're seeing a growing threat to children and families. Changing attitudes about drugs are exposing young children to risks with dangerous consequences, and these are things that are important to us in Iowa and our families. Joining us are two experts, Kevin Brownell and Lee Leiter, to talk about the efforts to protect drug-endangered children and what that means to every parent and family. Let's meet our guests. Welcome to the show. Kevin, starting with you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate you having me on. As you said, my name is Kevin Brownell. I'm with the Polk County Attorney's Office. I serve as an assistant county attorney here in Polk. I've been with the office since 2006, so 17 years, coming up on 18. For the entirety of those 17 years, I've had the really the honor or the pleasure to serve in the juvenile division, which is mainly, either working with kids under 18 that commit crimes, also working with kids who come to the attention of the Department of Health and Human Services or the courts due to child welfare issues. Also work with families with kids that have with mental health commitments. So I've been with the office for, as I said, 17 years. I first became involved with drug endangered children in the Alliance for Drug Endangered Children going back before 2006. I think it was 2003 or 2004, coming before going into law school. There was a move, at least here in Polk County, to really do something, really to try to help these kids that have been exposed to drugs, help kids that have been exposed to drug labs. And really, that was kind of the start of it for me. I remember going into the office and just researching to figure out how many kids we've had that have been exposed to drugs, either one way or the other, whether it was meth labs, whether it was methamphetamine itself, whether it was other drugs. And it was a super majority of the cases we had in those years. And then the next step was, what is going to be our response? So ever since then, going back to 2003 or 2004, I've been involved with the Drug Endangered Children. Or the Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. I became more probably active in that starting about 10 years ago, just working with the Alliance here in Polk County. So appreciate you having me on, and hopefully I appreciate your audience, taking the time to listen to us and help the community and the people of Iowa. So thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Kevin. Lee, how about you?
Thank you for having us. My name's Lee Leiter. I'm a special agent with the Iowa Division of Narcotics Enforcement. I've been with the Division of Narcotics Enforcement since 1999, with the Department of Public Safety since 1994. So I'm at my 30-year mark here. I was introduced to the Drug Endangered Children program as a special agent. I was assigned to the Iowa Clandestine Laboratory Emergency Response Team. And I was at a conference in New Orleans where the National Methamphetamine Chemical Initiative was kind of the birthplace for National DEC. And what the speakers were talking about made sense to me. And we made an effort to bring the program back to Iowa, and we kind of formalized or started to formalize in 2003, and I've been a part of that since.
We've been sort of following what's been going on with drug endangered children over the years here, and we see some interesting, well, not interesting, but just scary trends. The safety net that people have once there's some intervention within the system that Drug Endangered Children's program has provided for people has been extremely important and literally saved the lives of young children and kept families together in the long run. But now we're seeing more and more threats to not the extreme families. We see the marijuana edibles and other things that are, we're seeing children in emergency rooms, and calls to the Poison Control Center go up. Now, I'm not saying that all of these families where they have young children dealing with this need to place a call and say, hey, I need help from the Drug Endangered Children's program. But the principles around which your structures all have relevant sort of ideas that parents should know about, because the last thing they want to do is put their child at risk. Can you give us an overview of sort of how the program works in general?
So getting back to when I was introduced to it, the question was asked to us as attendees at the conference, we've done drug law enforcement for a long time, and that's my perspective, is the law enforcement side of it. And are we in better shape, worse shape? What are we missing? And of course, we had these emotional encounters with children when we serve search warrants or on interdiction stops out on the interstate. We had all these very specific, outrageous interactions where we really didn't know what to do. We realized we were all, as professionals, had the same goal, but we were very fragmented or operated in our own little worlds, in our own little silos. Whether it was law enforcement, the crimes against persons detectives, and the narcotics detectives didn't speak, even though they were working the same case. Whether it was prevention and treatment not speaking with, just everyone operating in their own individual silos, and we needed to figure out a way to break those barriers and start communicating, come up with some agreements. And we were also seeing multiple generations of the same families, and what are we missing there? So that was
take a short break. I'm
questions.
going to interrupt you because there's a lot to be told here. Take a short break for our audience and come back and continue the story. Thank you very much. Stay with us. You don't want to miss this.
Malware and bots and worms, oh my. The wild, wild web can be a scary and complex place. And as our digital world expands, so too are the threats. Watch out, Trojan horse. That's why at MediaCom, we take security very seriously and monitor our networks around the clock to stop threats before they can affect you. Not today, rude kid. Not all internet is created equal. We build ours to keep you connected and protected.
Watching MC22 is now easier than ever before. All MediaCom customers can watch local programming online anytime. Go to mc22.net, click Watch MC22, and log in with your MediaCom account. Not a MediaCom cable subscriber? MediaCom internet or phone subscribers can watch too. Your local programming leader, MC22, online at mc22.net/watch.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Kevin and Lee about risks to children that in the past were probably considered extreme cases of abuse or neglect, and still are in some cases. But today we see the lessons learned from the most extreme circumstances in a way that they can help us cope with challenges reaching right into the best of Iowa communities. Let's learn more about what this program is about. Lee, continue the story.
So the overarching national philosophy on this that Iowa has obviously adopted is that if you have children involved with drugs, and it doesn't matter what the drug is, there is a risk. We've learned that children are resilient, and it's never too late. If you have some type of intervention, let's have a coordinated, thoughtful intervention with the families, with the children, get them to the right place, the right services, hopefully introduce new services. And this was, at the beginning anyway, this was something that was extremely fragmented, but has become successful. And overall, I think if the philosophy is adopted, that you have children involvement with drugs, that there's a risk that they'll follow that path. So let's try and intervene. And it's very community specific. The abilities, well, I should say that the resources available in some of our rural counties are not the same, obviously, as the larger metro communities. Polk, Potawatomi, Lynn, Johnson, the big counties. Taylor County is not going to have those same resources. They have the people that care, that are willing to jump in and do what they can do. And it's just a matter of coordinating the services and introducing people to what occurs.
And in many cases, if I might ask a question, these are really young and innocent children that, because whether their parents are using meth or marijuana or opioids or even alcohol excessively, they're not children going out using drugs. They're often young, innocent children that are in the environment where they're being used, and dangerous circumstances can arise. Is that true?
Yes. I would say, obviously, a parent using with a substance abuse disorder is going to make poor decisions. But even if the parent or guardian who is involved with drugs, whether they're a courier or a distributor, there's so many risks and hazards that go along with that, from violence and robbery, and who the customers are that are appearing at their door at 2 o'clock in the morning. The children are just exposed to a lot. They're exposed to a lifestyle that is really not normal for a child.
Kevin, how about telling us a little bit about how these sort of cooperative networks are structured in a community?
Absolutely. I think how they're structured is really what the community either demands or accepts, if that makes sense. I mean, I think you have to have first key stakeholders, which I think need to be probably should be law enforcement, child welfare, social services. Typically that's the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services. A prosecuting agency such as the county attorney's office, but I think it could be the attorney general. I think it could be the United States attorney. And then I think where you see it, differences in communities would be such as Polk County. We have a great resource with the STAR Center here, what used to be known as the Child Protection Center, where there's medical professionals involved that can examine kids that have been exposed to drugs. We see the Department of Corrections that's also involved, where they are working with parents typically that may be involved in the criminal justice system. You see foster parents, mental health providers that work with kids. There's so many different people that come together, and it's really a collaborative approach. I think at the end, the intent is to put up the website for the drug endangered children, the National Drug Endangered Children. But I think one of the coolest things, or one cool thing about the National Drug Endangered Children program is their logo. And something I just realized probably in the last year or two is their logo is actually, it's one hand kind of reaching out, which I think is supposed to be the child's hand, but then there's about 6 or 7 hands reaching back to help that one child. And that represents the different people coming together to really help one child, the different disciplines, the different agencies that may be coming together. And I always thought that was really neat. And whoever came up with that really deserves a lot of credit, because I think that really embodies what the people working for drug endangered children are trying to do, that it is a collaborative approach, that it takes an entire community. As Lee was talking about, we do see or a lot of these different agencies are seeing the same population, but maybe not necessarily communicating with one another. And so I think part of what DEC, the Drug Endangered Children, do is try to break down those walls to a certain extent and say, you do your part helping this child, we're going to do our part, and someone else, you stay in your lane, or you do your part, and we'll really do a nice job of trying to get the best outcome for this child. So working together, I think, is critical to helping these kids that are endangered by drugs.
That sounds very good. I'd like to hear more on that. We're going to take a short break, and we come back. We're going to continue our conversation with Lee and Kevin. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
Dad, I'm not glitching.
I told you with our new Extreme Internet, it will be smooth streaming.
That's unbelievable.
Well, you better believe it, Missy.
I already finished streaming the whole second season of my show.
So start the third.
What the fast? That's really not frustrating.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You should.
I'm gonna get some ice cream. Do you want some?
With the drama-free reliability of Extreme Internet, you'll have to create your own. Get super fast internet with whole home Wi-Fi for as low as $24.99 a month for a year.
You told me not to talk to strangers. You told me not to cross the street without looking both ways.
You told me not to touch the stove.
You told me not to do drugs.
You told me not to drink and drive.
You gave me so many messages about how to stay safe. Why didn't you keep me safe by properly storing your gun?
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking about drug-endangered children with Kevin and Lee. Now, these are risks that are no longer limited to the dark side of society's problems with crime and poverty. They are spreading at an alarming rate throughout Iowa communities. Kevin, can you shed some light on some of your concerns?
Yeah, I can at least probably scratch the surface of my concerns, but I think one place where drug endangered children in the Alliance working for drug endangered children is kind of looking at is just, as you stated, it's not so much the meth labs or, getting into the dark alleys it's really more about how we've seen the normalization of drug usage here, I'd say for the past several years, going back at least for the past 5 years, I'd say, if not longer, where, we've kind of changed, I think our society has kind of changed the way we view drugs. And to a certain extent, that's okay. But I think that also leaves a lot of room for some unintended consequences with that, where if we're talking about the legalization or the normalization of using marijuana and making marijuana seem more like medicine versus a drug that affects your ability to function, I think that really puts kids at risk. I think that really puts the community at risk overall. I don't know that we've really backfilled the different risks or dangers of, I guess, the normalization of using drugs, whether that's, I'm not aware of any sort of education behind or any sort of laws that relate to the driving under the influence of drugs. You make the normalization of any usage of drugs, but I'll key in on marijuana. That really that's going to impact kids. I don't know that the community necessarily, at least the community at large, necessarily accepts that parents should be under the influence of marijuana or other drugs while actively parenting. So I feel like there's an intersection there that really hasn't been addressed, and it really leaves alliances like the Drug Endangered Children to hopefully work on that issue, whether that's education, whether that's our response, whether that's how we truly address this issue as I think the state or the community kind of also redefines what they consider drug usage and what is acceptable in their community. So it's kind of hard to articulate, so I apologize if that doesn't make exact sense, but that's kind of where my head is at. It's just kind of where, how do we address this issue with the normalization of drug usage and try to help people with substance abuse issues, because we do want to help those people, but we also want to be wary of how to protect kids, how to protect the community.
Lee, what are your thoughts about this from a law enforcement point of view?
Well, I wouldn't take on, I can't, but I wouldn't take on the marijuana issue just from a political standpoint, but it has become very normal. I'm a parent and a grandparent. I've been a coach. I still play adult, recreational sports. And it's just anecdotally, people talk about marijuana, people talk about the edibles, the different forms of the THCs very openly, whether it's in a locker room or the kids talking, it's very normal. That's kind of shocking. And it's shocking for me when people know what I do for a living, because I've been doing this for a long time. And as secretive as we try and be about our profession, it gets out there, and have just normal conversations about what used to be their favorite kind of beer is now their favorite THC product. And it's just talked about very openly.
So do you think
it's frightening to me?
Yeah. Well, do you think that may be a sort of a, you've been around with drug endangered children. Do you think that maybe that is opening a door that you can see maybe 5 or 10 years from now, we're going to see more interventions based on drugs like this than just the meths and opioids and stuff.
Yes, the pendulum swings. You know, we've had, you know, I came into this with the meth lab crisis, which it certainly was in Iowa. And we have also learned that we can't just have these giant emotional reactions to it. It's hard to temper that, because when you go into some of these homes and you see the horrible conditions that these families are living in, it's hard to not to just react to that. But we need to be science-based. We don't want to put bad information out, because then we'll just get demolished in the media because we put out bad information. So we want research, we want science, we want to have intelligent conversations and make intelligent decisions with legislation moving forward.
Well, I mean, these are great points, and we are going to take a short break. But in terms of science, what we're seeing with poison control centers and emergency room visits is a greater frequency related to things like marijuana edibles than we ever saw for meth when it comes to young children. So even though you're holding back a little bit, it looks like there are some indicators we could have some major problems. So we're going to take a short break and ask Lee and Kevin to share some final comments, insights, and inspiration for all of you to take with you. See you after the break. You do not want to miss this.
Dad, I'm not glitching.
I told you with our new Extreme Internet, it will be smooth streaming.
That's unbelievable.
Well, you better believe it, Missy.
I already finished streaming the whole second season of my show.
So start the third.
What the fast? That's really not frustrating.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You should.
I'm gonna get some ice cream. Do you want some?
With the drama-free reliability of Extreme Internet, you'll have to create your own. Get super fast internet with whole home Wi-Fi for as low as $24.99 a month for a year.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to bed.
Oh boy.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Watching MC22 is now easier than ever before. All MediaCom customers can watch local programming online anytime. Go to mc22.net, click Watch MC22, and log in with your MediaCom account. Not a MediaCom cable subscriber? MediaCom internet or phone subscribers can watch too. Your local programming leader, MC22, online at mc22.net/watch.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we're talking about drug-endangered children and a growing threat to children and families. Let's see what insights and inspiration our guests, Kevin and Lee, have to share. Kevin, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I think the biggest thing with the drug-endangered children, or at least one big component of it, is awareness. That there are kids in the community that have parents or caretakers that have exposed them to drugs, and it's just knowing what that looks like or what that could look like. It's not necessarily that every child is exposed to drugs, but there are signs of that, whether it's neglect, whether it's parents acting erratically, whether it's how they show up at school, or whether they're showing up at school at all. So I think part of that's just being aware that there are kids in the community that are exposed, and how do we help them? You know, I'd also leave off with, in the at least 10 years that I've been doing this, I can say that the work that we do has really positively impacted kids in the community here, statewide. So I think it's encouraging to know that we're finding these kids, that we're helping these parents. The goal is to really help these parents. The state doesn't want to raise these kids. They want them to be with their parents. Number one, we want these kids to be safe, but ultimately want the parents to address their substance use issues and then be safe caretakers to their kids. So, and we've seen that, and there's example after example of that. So that's what wakes me up in the morning, or motivates me to continue doing this, is knowing that this work is positive for the community and is helping people, helping kids, helping families.
Thank you, Kevin. And Lee?
Some things I noted as we've been talking today were, and I think this would go with all disciplines that are involved in the Direct DEC program, and that would be accountability. Accountability for the families, accountability for the persons with substance abuse disorders. What that accountability looks like doesn't always have to be prison. It is appropriate accountability, but it's certainly a big component, and I think social services, medical professionals, all disciplines in this would agree with that. The second thing is that I wouldn't want to present this as doom and gloom. Children are resilient, and if you're that professional, whether you're a teacher or a school counselor or whoever it is in the community, faith-based community, if you have that opportunity to be that person that can make contact and have that 5-minute conversation that helps start down that path to engage services, seize it. And then the last thing I would say with accountability, and something that's been satisfying for me in my career, has not been how many people have gone to prison. I mean, obviously there's feathers and caps for large seizures and that kind of thing in my profession. But the most satisfying thing in the 30 plus years in law enforcement that I've experienced has been when someone has been held accountable and perhaps even served federal prison time, which, you know, is significant. When they come out on the other end and they're willing to call me, or they're willing to call one of my coworkers that we put the case together and held them accountable, but they see someone in trouble and they reach out to us now because we built that rapport, we built that trust. That has, of all the things in law enforcement, that's been the most satisfying thing for me, has been that once in a while you really do make a difference. And every person that's held accountable, you know, they have family, whether they have nieces and nephews, whether there was drug exposure there somewhere along the way for a kid. And it really is satisfying to see someone successful on the other end. That's the best thing that I can see through this whole program is success on the other end.
Thank you so very much, gentlemen. And thank you on behalf of the partnership for all the work you do for drug endangered children. And thank you all for watching today. Check out our website, ahealthyiowa.org, and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. On MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.